So hello everyone, in this video I'll be talking about the basic anatomy of vitreous. This video is based on the book by American Academy of Ophthalmology called as Retina and Vitreous. So if we talk about the vitreous, it is composed of three things. First is the water, second is the collagen, and third is the hyaluronic acid. And this vitreous, it comprises the 80% of volume of eye. Okay, now if we divide vitreous topographically, so it is divided into two main topographical areas. So topographically it is divided into two main areas, the central or the core vitreous and the peripheral or the cortical vitreous. Okay, if we see ultrastructurally, means in a very great detail, the vitreous is made up of collagen fibrils which are separated by the hyaluronic acid molecule. So these are the collagen fibrils and separated by the hyaluronic acid molecules. Okay, collagen fibrils separated by the hyaluronic acid molecules. Now the anterior surface of the vitreous is called as the anterior cortical gel. So now if this is the vitreous, this is the vitreous cavity. So this anterior surface, this is called as the anterior cortical gel. Anterior cortical gel, and this is made up of the condensation of collagenous fibrils and it attached to the posterior lens capsule. So let's draw a diagram. This is the cornea. Okay, more curved. This continues posteriorly as the sclera. Sorry for the bad drawing of mine. Somewhere here is the lens, the crystalline lens, right? Now this is the iris, or sorry, this is the pars plicatum. Okay, now these are the zonules. These are the zonules. Now this is called as the anterior boundary of vitreous. This is called as the anterior hyaloid. Anterior hyaloid, right? So now, so we were talking about the anterior cortical gel, or this is the anterior surface of the vitreous. Now what happens is the collagenous fibers which were forming the some part of the vitreous, they condenses and they attach to the posterior lens capsule. So the collagen fibrils, they condenses and they attach to the posterior lens capsule and they form the Weger ligament. Right? So they form the Weger ligament. Now this retrolental indentation. Now behind the lens there is an indentation of the vitreous. Okay, this is called as the patellar fossa. Now because of this convex structure of the lens, there is an indentation on the anterior surface of the vitreous and this is called as the patellar fossa. Now there is some space between the posterior lens capsule and the anterior surface of the vitreous, which is bordered by the Weger ligament. Weger ligament are the condensation of the collagen fibrils. Now this space is called as the Berger space. the Berger space. Now, where is the vitreous space? So, this area near the ora serrata, this is the vitreous base. So, what happens is in the vitreous base, the collagen fibrils of the vitreous, they are particularly dense and they are firmly attached to the anterior retina and the posterior pars plana. Now here the retina ends, so this is the anterior part of the retina and the posterior part of the pars plana. Here the collagen fibrils of the vitreous are firmly attached and it form the anterior base. And now this form the vitreous base. Now this vitreous base is a ring-like area. It, अंगूठी की तरह होता है, मतलब एक गोल सर्किल की तरह होता है क्योंकि ये पूरा 360 डिग्री होगा, राइट. So which now this ring like area, it extends approximately 2 millimeter anterior and 3 to 4 millimeter posterior to the ora serrata. Now this is the ora serrata, so it extends 2 millimeter anterior and 3 to 4 millimeter posterior to the ora serrata, and this full part is called as the vitreous base. Okay, so vitreous is firmly attached to the vitreous base, and where else it is attached? It is attached to this posterior lens capsule, to the retinal vessels, to the optic nerve there, and there is the fovea. Okay. So the densely packed the collagen fibrils in the cortical vitreous, they form the cortical gel. What happens posteriorly is that the fibers, they run parallel to the inner surface of the retina. Okay, posteriorly the fibers, how they run? They run parallel to the inner surface of the retina. They run like somewhat like this. They run parallel to the inner surface of the retina, and what they form? They form the pre-retinal tract. So this is the pre-retinal tract. Now what happens is the vitreous attaches to the retinal surface, specifically the internal limiting membrane. And how it attaches? Via the adhesion molecules, fibronectin and the laminin. Okay. One more thing, that there is no basement membrane between the vitreous base and the lens. So this is the vitreous base and the lens. So there is no basement membrane. So there is an area which is called as the annular gap. What we call it? We call it the annular gap. And why this is important? It is important for diffusion between the aqueous and the vitreous, right? So between this vitreous base and the lens, there is no basement membrane. So what is there? There is an annular gap, and which is important for diffusion between the aqueous and the vitreous. Posteriorly it runs the Cloquet canal. This is the Cloquet canal. What happens is that the area where the posterior vitreous is attached to the macula, there is a loose area. Okay, this is called as the premacular bursa or the posterior precortical vitreous pocket. So what is the significance of it? It decreases the tractional forces which are generated during the ocular motion. One important thing is the vitreous, it insert on the edge of the optic nerve head. Now this is the edge of the optic nerve head. So vitreous is inserted on it, and it creates a funnel shaped void of vitreous. Now this is the opening of the Cloquet canal, and it is referred to as the area of Martighiani. Cloquet canal, and this funnel shaped opening is called as the area of Martighiani. Gyani. Okay. And one important thing is that the anatomy of the vitreous is difficult to delineate in vivo. Okay. Vitreous, it also contains hyocytes, right? One thing that it contains. Another thing is how it derives oxygen from the choroidal and retinal circulation. From the choroidal and retinal circulation. And it has got high ascorbate level. It has got high ascorbate levels and which protects against the oxidative damage. Now let's talk about the neurosensory retina. If we talk about the topography of retina, so the central area of retina, this big area, this is called as the macula or the area centralis. Area centralis. It is like 5.5 millimeter in diameter and is centered between the optic nerve head and the temporal vascular arcades. So this is the optic nerve head. This is the optic nerve head and these are the temporal vascular arcades. The area between it is called as the it is called as the macula or the area centralis. It contains two or more layer of ganglion cells histologically. Why it is yellow in color? Because of the oxygenated carotenoids. Carotenoids, particularly lutein and zeaxanthin. And it gives the yellow color. The central 1.5 mm of macula, it is called as the fovea. Now this is 5.5 millimeter. So this central 1.5 millimeter of macula called as the fovea or fovea centralis. It is responsible for the high spatial acuity and the color vision. This fovea has a margin. It has got a downward slope. Now this fovea, it has got a margin. It has got a downward slope and a floor which is called as the foveola. Okay. This floor is called as the foveola and it has got a diameter of 0.35 millimeter. And in this diameter or in this area, the cones are cylinder, elongated and densely packed. So it has got densely packed cones. Now at the center of the foveola is a small depression. Now in the center of the foveola, this small depression, this which is 150 to 200 micrometer in diameter, and this is called as the umbo. So foveola, umbo. Foveola, diameter of 0.35 millimeter, and the center point that is called as the umbo. Diameter is 150 to 200 microns. Now within the fovea, there is a region which is devoid of the retinal vessels, and that is called as the foveal avascular zone. This is called as the foveolar avascular zone, FAZ. Okay. Now the diameter of this avascular zone, it ranges from 250 to 600 microns. It ranges from 250 to 600 microns or greater. Now, what is the center of the foveal avascular zone? It is the center of the macula and thus the point of fixation. Center of FAZ बराबर center of macula. Okay. So what happens is we have talked about the macula, then we have talked about the fovea or the fovea centralis. Then we have talked about the fovula and then the umbo. And then we have talked about the foveal avascular zone. Right? Now surrounding the fovea. Now if we talk about the surrounding the fovea, there is a 0.5 mm wide ring. Now this is a 0.5 mm wide ring surrounding the fovea. This. What this is called as a paraphobia. Paraphobia. This is 0.5 mm wide ring. Okay. Now what happens in the periphobia is that the ganglion cell layer, the inner nuclear layer and the outer plexiform layer, they are the thickest. Outer plexiform layer is also called as the Henle fiber layer. These are the thickest. Now surrounding this paraphobia is a periphobia, which is 1.5 millimeter wide. This is periphobia. It is 1.5 mm wide. Okay. So this umbo forms the center of the macula and the periphery of the periphobia, it forms the margin of the macula. Now let's talk about what is outside the macula. Okay. Retina has got center mein has got a macula. Outside the macula, it is the extra-areal periphery. Okay. It is the macula and it is the extra-areal periphery. It is divided into, first is the near periphery. This near periphery is a 1.5 mm ring, which is peripheral to the temporal major vascular arcades. Then we have the equatorial retina. Okay, so this is the retina around the equator and the region which is anterior to this equatorial retina, that is called as the peripheral retina. And the pars periphery, that is the border between the retina and the pars plana, this is called as the ora serrata. Okay. Now the posterior border of the vitreous base, it is located between the ora serrata and the equator of the eye. One important thing is that we have talked about the vitreous base. Now the vitreous base has got an anterior border and a posterior border. There is something called as the ora serrata. 2 millimeter anterior to the ora serrata and 3 to 4 millimeter posterior to the ora serrata. Now this is the vitreous base. Now this is the region between the ora serrata and somewhere the equator of the eye that the maximum tear occur. Why? Because the vitreous is very strongly adherent to this area. Okay. Now let's talk about the dentate processes. Okay. So what are the dentate processes? Retinal tissue which extend anteriorly into the pars plana, that is the dentate processes. The retinal tissue which extend anteriorly into the pars plana. Okay. These dentate processes, they are more prominent nasally. Right. What are oral bays? These are the extension of the pars plana towards the retina. अगर retina goes into pars plana, so this is the dentate processes. What are oral bays? These are the extension of pars plana into retinal tissue. Extension of pars plana into the retinal tissue. Okay. In some occasions, the dentate processes may wrap around a portion of an ora bay to form an enclosed ora bay. Right. What is a meridional fold? It is a thickening of the retinal tissue that extend into the pars plana. Okay. So dentate processes, oral bays, meridional fold. What is that? So it is a thickening of retinal tissue that extend into the pars plana. Now when a meridional fold is aligned with a ciliary process, so meridional fold plus ciliary process, this is the meridional complex. Now let's in my next video I'll be talking about the retinal layers and the neurosensory element.